She thought she was walking into a friendly TV interview. But as the cameras rolled, the jokes got personal. Laughter filled the studio, until one woman's silence changed everything. What began as light entertainment became a national reckoning. Under the warm spotlight of a Los Angeles studio, the audience buzzed with the familiar excitement of an Ellen DeGeneres taping. Applause signs flickered, the iconic set gleamed with pastel charm, and offstage producers gave their final cues. Everything was just as it had always been, safe, funny, polished. Ellen DeGeneres strode onto the stage with her trademark stride and sparkle, the audience erupting into cheers. Her smile was radiant, and her voice quick with that familiar rhythm of playful sarcasm and inviting warmth. "Today's guest is a little different," she teased. "She's young, she's bold, and she works for, let's just say, a very quiet White House." Laughter rolled across the studio. Ellen continued, "Some call her a rising political star. Some just call her brave for doing daily press briefings in that circus." More laughs. But behind the curtain, Caroline Levitt stood still, one hand resting gently on her stomach, the other lightly brushing the crossed necklace that hung just below her collarbone. She wasn't nervous, she was centered. The introduction rolled. "Please welcome White House Press Secretary Caroline Levitt." The applause surged again. Caroline stepped into the lights wearing a tailored navy suit, her expression composed, poised. She walked with purpose, not rushing, not hesitating. Her smile was polite, but her eyes said she knew exactly where she was. As she took her seat across from Ellen, the audience settled in, expecting more laughs. But what they didn't know was that this interview wasn't going to be like the others. The jokes were soft, at first, but behind the smile was a challenge waiting to be unwrapped. Ellen leaned forward, legs crossed, a twinkle of mischief in her eyes. "So, Caroline," she began lightly, "I've got to say, you're kind of serious." Laughter again. "You walk in here like someone's about to give a press conference on the economy, not sit on a couch with me and dance." Caroline chuckled gently, brushing the comment aside with grace. Ellen wasn't done. "But seriously, you're the youngest press secretary in history," she said, tilting her head. "That's impressive. Or terrifying. I mean, I wasn't even responsible for my own dog at your age." The crowd laughed again, a little louder this time. Caroline nodded. "It's definitely a challenge," she said softly, "but I believe in what I do, and I believe in doing it with integrity." "Oh," Ellen smirked, feigning surprise. "So we're bringing up big words already. Integrity. You're not going to start talking about faith next, are you?" Laughter. Caroline smiled again, but said nothing. Ellen noticed the silence. She leaned back, eyes narrowing with curiosity. There was something unnerving about how calm Caroline was. She didn't clap back. She didn't try to win. She just sat there. The crowd was eating it up, but Ellen sensed it. This guest wasn't like the others. There was something deeper under the surface, something she couldn't yet name. The crowd roared with laughter, but Caroline's silence grew louder than the punchlines. Ellen shifted in her seat, her voice growing bolder. "Okay, but I've got to ask," she said, her tone playful but pointed. "Do you actually believe that someone upstairs," she gestured toward the ceiling, "is watching over your daily press briefings? Like, seriously? With everything happening out there?" The audience erupted into laughter. Even Ellen laughed at her own joke. "I mean, I can barely believe in online delivery windows, let alone divine scheduling." More laughter. Caroline's smile didn't fade, but something in her expression changed. Her fingers drifted once again to her necklace. She touched the small cross gently, not to show it off, not to make a statement, just to remember. "I'm not here by luck," she said, her voice calm. "Faith is my strength." The words weren't loud, but the effect was immediate. The laughter stopped. A few polite chuckles lingered, but the studio felt off, like something had shifted, a current running underneath the usual rhythm of sarcasm and applause. Ellen blinked. She wasn't expecting that. "Wow," she said, recovering quickly. "Okay, well, I'm glad someone's handling divine logistics because I can't even manage brunch." The crowd laughed again, but it was thinner this time, less certain. Caroline simply sat there, still, composed, and more powerful than ever. What the audience didn't know was that Ellen had been told to push her. Backstage, during the last segment break, producers buzzed with quiet intensity. A junior producer leaned toward the lead, whispering through a headset. "She's not biting." The lead frowned. "Then push harder." Another voice chimed in. "Ellen needs to get her to react. That's what makes it viral." They weren't looking for a conversation. They were looking for a moment. Ellen's questions had been scripted with a goal in mind: poke the bear, rattle the image, get a soundbite. Faith was a soft target. They didn't expect Caroline to hold the line without raising her voice. They didn't expect silence to be the thing that shook the room. Later, that very exchange, the push, the cross, the calm, would flood every social platform. But in this moment, no one knew just how far this story would ripple. The audience waited, hungry for another punchline, but something invisible was beginning to stir, an undercurrent of tension or, perhaps, reverence. And Caroline? She hadn't even said much at all. She didn't need to. Sometimes the loudest moments are the ones where no one says a word. The interview moved forward, but the laughter didn't flow like before. The jokes landed awkwardly. The crowd clapped out of habit, not from the heart. Something had changed. Ellen, ever the professional, tried to pivot. "So, Caroline, tell us, what do you do to unwind? Don't tell me you pray for fun." She grinned. But it didn't stick. Caroline glanced towards her quietly. Then, just as she began to speak, the studio lights flickered. At first, it was subtle, a pulse. Then the stage monitors cut out. The mic levels dropped. Then silence. 10 full seconds of complete stillness. No buzz, no sound, no laughter. The crew froze. The audience sat paralyzed. Even Ellen, who had commanded thousands of live shows, didn't move. The only thing visible in that strange pause was Caroline's silhouette, sitting still in the semi-darkness, the soft gleam of her cross catching a shard of emergency light. And then, just as quickly, the lights came back on. The mics returned. But the studio wasn't the same. The audience didn't laugh. They didn't even shift. They watched her. She thought she was in control. But silence can disarm even the most seasoned host. Ellen cleared her throat, tried to laugh. "Okay, wow. Maybe the studio's having a spiritual experience." The line was meant to reset the energy. It didn't. She tried again. "Let's talk about your dog, or something lighter." Stillness. Then Caroline looked at her, eyes steady. "I don't wear this for fashion," she said softly, fingers resting gently on the cross. "I wear it for memory, for forgiveness, for strength." The room didn't erupt. It inhaled. Ellen blinked, her usual sparkle dulled by something she hadn't anticipated. Honesty, real, quiet, disarming honesty. There was no comeback for that. The joker reveals her own scars, and the room listens in stillness. For a moment, Ellen said nothing. Then her voice softened. "When I was a kid," she began, "I used to pray every night. I'd beg God to make me normal." The studio stilled. No laughter, no shuffling. "I'd say, 'Please let me be good enough. Please don't let me go to hell.'" She paused. "But I never heard anything back. So I stopped praying, and I started mocking it. The books, the belief, people like you." Her eyes glistened. "Maybe I wasn't mocking your faith, Caroline," she said. "Maybe I was mocking the silence I didn't understand." Caroline leaned slightly forward. "No one prays in pain alone," she said, "even if you think no one's listening." They came for laughs, they left in tears, and the internet exploded. What happened next wasn't planned. Clips of the blackout, the silence, the soft-spoken response. They flooded social media within hours. #silence speaks trended first, then #faith not flawed. Viewers, believers, and non-believers alike began sharing their stories. A mother wrote, "I wear my cross again today." A veteran said her silence hit harder than any speech. Backstage footage leaked. A producer's voice could be heard. "Push her on, Faith. It'll go viral." It did, but not the way they thought. Because Caroline didn't fight. She didn't mock. She didn't try to win. She just was. And that was enough to move millions. She came back, not for revenge, but for something deeper. The network didn't waste time. Within days they announced it. Caroline Levitt would return to Ellen's show for a second interview. This time there was no snark in the promos, no funny slogans, just a still image of Caroline with the words, "A conversation that moved the world." Lines stretched down the block outside the studio, but the crowd was different now, not loud, not eager for laughs. They held signs that read, "Silence speaks. Let Caroline be Caroline." When the lights rose, Caroline walked out the same way she had before, poised, calm, the cross still faintly glimmering on her chest. Ellen stood to greet her. Her voice was clear but softer than usual. "Thank you for coming back." Caroline smiled gently. "Thank you for having me." There was no music, no flashing lights, just two women and the weight of what had passed between them. Ellen opened slowly, asking how Caroline felt after the first interview. But before she could answer, the lights flickered again. This time it wasn't a glitch. It was something else, a quiet ripple through the room. The audience didn't gasp. They held their breath, and then the lights steadied. No words, no script, just a cross on a table, and millions of hearts watching. Caroline didn't speak first. She simply placed something on the table between them, her cross necklace. Ellen stared at it. Her voice cracked slightly. "I don't know what happened that night. I thought I was in control, that I had a script. But you didn't try to win. You just held space." Caroline nodded. "It's not about winning. It's about showing up, even when it's hard." No one clapped, no one cheered, but no one moved either. The moment wasn't made for entertainment. It was made for memory. Later, Caroline posted a single photo to her account, a candle beside a folded note. The caption read, "You were heard." Ellen followed with her own. A selfie, no makeup, no lights. "Maybe God spoke to me that night. I finally stopped laughing and listened." The world did the same. In a time when every voice fights to be the loudest, Caroline Levitt showed us that power can live in stillness, that faith isn't weakness, and that silence, when rooted in truth, can echo louder than any headline. This wasn't a story about politics or religion. It was a story about presence. If this story moved you, share it. Let someone know that calm isn't surrender, that conviction doesn't always shout. Subscribe for more stories that don't just fill time, they leave a mark. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next chapter.